of muscles today. So these would be the learning objective for the lecture. You have to distinguish between the three types of muscles and how they differ in structure, as in microanatomy and function. So muscle, what is muscle? Everybody know it is a contractile tissue which is specialized for movements. Any contraction in the muscle will bring about the movement. So there is a contraction. Door close kar do. So muscles can be external or internal. External muscles that are attached to the skeletal framework, those are external, and internal that are lining the internal organs, like in GIT. Those are internal muscles. And muscles, there are two types: voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. So further classification of voluntary and involuntary would be skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and the cardiac muscle. So which are voluntary and which are involuntary, you very well know. Skeletal muscle is a voluntary and other two, they are involuntary, that is smooth and the cardiac muscle, they are not under our control. So muscle tissue, the individual cell of the muscle tissue is specially known as a myocyte. And what is the structure of that myocyte? It is an elongated fiber. So these are the classification on histological basis: cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and the skeletal muscles. Now how we will differentiate all these three types of muscles? In general anatomy, we have already discussed these coverings of the skeletal muscles: epimysium, perimysium, endomysium. So you all very well know what is epimysium. Covering of a whole muscle is a epimysium. Then comes the perimysium. So perimysium covers the fasciculi, and endomysium is covering a single fiber. So single fiber collection makes the fasciculi, and bundles of fasciculi, they make a muscle tissue. So whole of innermost one would be endo, then comes the peri, and then comes the epi. So if we see the histological picture, how these layers look like, these are connective tissue layers. So these are fasciculi. All these fasciculi, they are covered with the epimysium, and individual these fasciculi, they are covered with the perimysium. In this fasciculi, there are number of muscle fibers which are having a covering which is called as endomysium. So all of them, they are having a connective tissue layer. Now this is a histological picture of a skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle fibers, if we discuss, they are elongated fibers, cylindrical in nature. They have bands, the band of actin and myosin. So they give you striations in the skeletal muscles. So dark bands are A bands and light bands, they are I bands. So they have a regular arrangement of actin and myosin that gives the cross striation pattern in the skeletal muscle. So when we will see the histological picture, we will see the striations, and these are elongated fibers. And where would be the nucleus will be placed on the periphery. So any skeletal muscle fiber tissue slide will be having the nuclei on the periphery, and cross striations will be seen, and they will be cylindrical running fibers. So now the transverse section of the skeletal muscle. The transverse section of the muscle will be similar to that you have seen as the layers of perimysium, endomysium, and the epimysium. So these are the individual muscle fibers, and this is the fasciculi covered with the perimysium. Here also we can see these nuclei, they are arranged on the periphery. So for skeletal muscle, do remember that the nuclei, they are always placed in the periphery, whether it's a longitudinal section or the transverse section. This is the location of the skeletal muscles. Next comes the smooth muscle, which is an involuntary muscle. So whole of the GIT is having the smooth muscle fibers, except the esophagus, which is having the skeletal muscle fibers also. So upper part of esophagus is having the skeletal muscles, then the middle part is having the mixed type of muscles, and the lowermost part is having the smooth muscles. What type of muscle fibers are contained in the tongue? Last row, Last row, all three. Yes, please stand up. Yes, all three. One more is there. You also stand up. So smooth muscle fibers. Okay, I was talking about tongue. Tongue is having skeletal muscle fibers, so it is under your control. So smooth muscles in rest of the GIT is having the smooth muscles, and that too that GIT is having the proper arrangement of the circular muscle fibers and the longitudinal. They are in the different layers. Two muscle layer will be seen in the muscular layer. One would be the longitudinal, other would be the circular layer. So these smooth muscle fibers, how we will identify the slide of the smooth muscle fibers? They are non-striated. There would be no striations, that means no actin and myosin bands are present over there. Then what is the shape of an individual muscle fiber in the smooth muscle? It is fusiform in shape. So when we draw a diagram, so it is a fusiform shape. And these fusiform shaped fibers, they are elongated from sides, and in the center you can see the nuclei. What is the shape of the nuclei is important here. It is a rounded nuclei present in the smooth muscle fibers. While in the skeletal muscle fibers, it is a flattened and it is present on the periphery. This is the transverse section of the smooth muscle. In the transverse section of the smooth muscle, you will just see the dotted nuclei. A whole of these muscle fibers, they are stained pink and the nuclei will be seen as a dots. And when we draw the diagram, we can see these individual fibers, they are circular in shape. So these are the muscle fibers, and a circular nuclei, round nuclei would be present in the transverse section of the smooth muscle. Now this is a picture of a GIT where you can see the longitudinal as well as transverse section of the smooth muscle fibers. So in the longitudinal section, we can see elongated, fusiform shaped muscle fibers with the round nuclei, while in the circular, we can see the circles of the individual muscle fibers containing the round nuclei. Now, where are these smooth muscles are present? In the GIT, in the bladder, in the uterus. So in visceral organs, they are having the smooth muscles. Next is the cardiac muscle. So where is the cardiac muscle present? It is present in the heart. Now it is very important to differentiate between a skeletal muscle and a cardiac muscle. Though we know it is a voluntary and involuntary, but on the histological picture, these two would be different. One important characteristic, that is intercalated disc, is present in the cardiac muscle. So these are the intercalated discs which are present in the cardiac muscle. Then what is the shape of these fibers that will confuse you with the skeletal muscles? What is the shape of the skeletal muscle fibers? Cylindrical. So they also look similar to the skeletal muscles. Striations. First point for the skeletal is it is cylindrical in shape. Other point is they are having the striations. So if you see this histology of the cardiac muscle, you will see the striations here also. Yes? The striations are there in the cardiac muscle also, but they are very light bands are present over here. We have not seen any branching pattern in the skeletal muscle fibers. But these cardiac muscle fibers, they are having the branching pattern. So these muscle fibers, they are running longitudinally and they branch. So this branching is very clear in this picture. These are the individual muscle fibers which are branching and anastomosing with each other. So they have striations. Yes, please. Last row. आप दोनों खड़े हो जाओ. No, this one. Yes. Next. So the striations are present in the cardiac muscle also, skeletal muscle, but the intercalated disc and the branching pattern is not present in the skeletal muscle fibers. Now, what is the location of the nuclei in the cardiac muscle? Is it at the periphery? No. So, this is the third point of differentiation from the skeletal muscle. बाहर जाना है क्लास से, खड़े होने के बाद भी चुप नहीं हो सकते. So the location of these nuclei is central. And what is the shape of the nuclei? What is the shape of this nuclei? It's a round. So there is a single centrally placed nuclei in the cardiac muscle fiber. Sometimes you may find two nuclei in the cardiac muscle fiber. That is also the characteristic feature of these cardiac cells. But only sometimes. Usually all the single nuclei is present in the individual muscle fibers. What is intercalated disc? They are junctional complexes. So these junction complexes, how do they help? Transmission of the electrical impulses, they are faster because of the presence of these junctional complexes over here. So this is the cardiac muscle that is present over the heart. So we have read about the skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscle. All of you please sit down. So all three muscle fibers, you should be clearly able to differentiate between these three. So I'll ask you to differentiate between the skeletal and smooth muscles. Can you differentiate? Okay, who will tell me? Who will tell me what is the difference between the skeletal muscle and the smooth muscle? अभी तो सब यस बोल रहे थे. हाँ बताओ. Good. Skeletal muscle fiber. Yes. Or location of the nuclei in the center. Location of the muscle fibers. Skeletal muscle fibers are found on the and smooth muscle. Smooth muscle fibers in the visceral organs. Sit down. Now who will differentiate between the skeletal and the cardiac muscle fibers? What is the difference between the smooth and the skeletal and the cardiac muscle fibers? But don't say this. This is not a differentiating point. You are saying multinucleated and you are or branched and unbranched or peripheral nucleus. So this is how you will differentiate between three histological pictures. So this is all in the lecture of this muscle tissue. You have to remember the histological picture, the location of the muscle fibers, the nuclei, the shape of the muscle fibers, and the striations, where are they present. Anything that is not clear to you, you can ask.